entertainment world has been rocked by the baffling and tragic demise of Hollywood icon Gene Hackman, discovered lifeless alongside his wife and their loyal dog in their Santa Fe, New Mexico estate. At the age of 62, Jean Hackman's daughter is finally stepping out of the shadows to break her silence mere days after the legendary actor's passing shook the globe. For decades, the entire Hackman clan has notoriously kept their private affairs strictly behind closed doors, away from the prying eyes of the paparazzi. But now, in the devastating wake of her father's death, she is coming forward to address and confirm the swirling rumours that have been dominating the headlines. The Oscar-winning legend's daughter, Elizabeth Jean Hackman, is opening up about her theory regarding how her father may have actually died. What exactly transpired behind the walls of that desert home? Stick with us as we dive into her emotional revelations and try to uncover the grim truth behind the final days of one of cinema's most cherished stars. Gene Hackman and his wife were found dead in their Santa Fe residence on February 26, 2026. A truly heartbreaking discovery was made at the private Santa Fe, New Mexico property belonging to retired actor Gene Hackman and his wife Betsy Arakawa. The couple, along with one of their 3 beloved canine companions, were found deceased inside their main residence. Hackman, who was 95 years old, had lived an incredibly long and distinguished life in the public eye. This tragic find was made by a property maintenance worker who, upon showing up at the house, was horrified to stumble upon the bodies and immediately dialed emergency services for help. Deputies from the Santa Fe Sheriff's Office rushed to the scene shortly after the call. The employee told officers that he had last been in contact with the couple roughly 2 weeks prior to this grim discovery, which immediately raised alarming questions about how long they had been lying there deceased. Upon entering the home, deputies located Hackman's body in the mudroom area in an advanced state of decomposition, suggesting some time had passed. Arakawa's body was found in a similar condition inside a bathroom located nearby. Prescription bottles were found scattered across the area, including meds for high blood pressure and thyroid. Issues which only added a layer of complexity to the investigation. Compounding the tragedy was the heartbreaking fate of one of their dogs, a German Shepherd, who was discovered lifeless in a closet right near Arakawa. Miraculously, however, their 2 other dogs were found alive elsewhere on the property, offering a glimmer of hope in an otherwise dark situation. The sheriff's deputies processing the scene noted that it appeared Hackman had collapsed suddenly, with evidence suggesting that Arakawa likely met a similar instant fate around the same time. Investigators estimated that both of them had likely passed away several days before being found, potentially up to 2 weeks prior. The Santa Fe County Sheriff's Department moved quickly to address the public announcing on February 27th that there were no obvious signs of foul play or a break-in. However, the exact cause and precise time of death remained a total mystery at that moment. Fire department officials swept the property with sensors, but found no evidence of an active carbon monoxide leak, initially ruling that out as a potential cause. The Sheriff's Office has since launched a full-scale investigation into the circumstances surrounding these deaths, leaving many questions lingering without answers. The initial autopsy reports didn't show any signs of external trauma or violence on either Hackman or Arakawa, but it was evident by the time they were found that natural mummification had already begun to set in due to the environment. Further toxicology testing and investigation showed no trace of carbon monoxide poisoning, and on February 28th, authorities confirmed that both individuals tested negative for the gas. However, a fascinating clue emerged from data pulled from Hackman's pacemaker, which indicated that the actor likely died on February 17th, nearly 2 full weeks before his body was actually discovered. This timeline revelation has left investigators scratching their heads as they try to piece together the details of this bizarre and tragic event. But what does his daughter have to say about what killed him? Let's get into it. Following Gene Hackman and Betsy Arakawa's sudden passing the family is pointing fingers at carbon monoxide poisoning. Elizabeth Jean Hackman, the middle child of the iconic movie star Gene Hackman, and his first wife, Faye Maltese, has officially broken her silence regarding the heartbreaking loss of her father and his longtime wife, Betsy Arakawa. The couple was discovered dead inside their Santa Fe, New Mexico home on Wednesday, February 26th, igniting a wave of grief and wild speculation among family members. Elizabeth, now 62, opened up about the family's strong suspicions regarding what led to these untimely deaths during an exclusive interview with the outlet TMZ. Although the official police investigation is still ongoing to pin down the definitive cause of death, Elizabeth and her siblings represent a united front, believing that carbon monoxide poisoning is the likely culprit. Police had originally responded to a welfare check called in by concerned neighbours, only to find that Gene Hackman, 95, Arakawa, and one of their 3 dogs had been dead for quite some time. The specific reason the neighbours decided to call for a welfare check remains a bit foggy, and it is not known exactly what red flags prompted their concern. As it stands right now, there are no indicators of foul play, according to law enforcement officials. Sheriff Adam Mendoza, while confirming there is no immediate evidence of a crime committed, hasn't completely taken anything off the table as the probe continues. Elizabeth held back from giving specific details on her father's recent medical history, though it is well documented that in his last public sighting, just 12 months prior, fans caught a rare glimpse of the legend relying on a walking cane for mobility. Aside from his daughter Elizabeth, the Hollywood titan Gene Hackman is survived by his eldest son Christopher and his youngest daughter Leslie. It is worth noting that he and his late wife Betsy Arakawa never welcomed any children of their own during their long union. The clan is currently in the thick of processing this monumental loss, and as of right now, specific plans for a memorial service or funeral arrangements have not been set in stone. In a deeply emotional exclusive given to Parade magazine, the silence was broken by Elizabeth Leslie and granddaughter Annie, who came together to pay tribute to the patriarch. They stated, "It is with the heaviest of hearts and great sadness that we must share the news of the passing of our father, Gene Hackman, alongside his wife, Betsy. While the world revered him for his cinematic genius, to us, he was simply Dad and Grandpa. The void left behind is massive, and we are absolutely shattered by this tragedy. We will miss him sorely." Those poignant words really highlight the raw personal agony the family is enduring, which exists completely separate from Gene's massive celebrity status and enduring legacy in Tinseltown. However, a darker cloud hangs over this grief. As the family tries to survive this painful chapter, the official investigation into the exact cause of their deaths is still ongoing. The Hackman family is desperately holding on to hope that they will get some clear answers soon as they prepare for the necessary steps to honour their loved ones. Gene Hackman's shadow over Hollywood is gigantic, marking him as one of the greatest actors to ever do it. The shockwaves of his loss are rippling not just through his immediate circle, but through millions of fans who worshipped his work throughout an illustrious career. That lingering uncertainty surrounding how it all happened only adds to the family's burden, though they are trying to stay focused on healing together and finding some semblance of peace. Now let's shift focus to Elizabeth, one of the late icon's daughters, who has mastered the art of flying under the radar. Let's delve into the details of who she actually is. Elizabeth Jean Hackman prefers the shadows to the spotlight. Elizabeth Jean Hackman, born back in August of 1962, is the daughter of the acting legend and his first wife, Faye Maltese. According to reports from the New York Post, Elizabeth sits right in the middle of the sibling lineup, sandwiched between her older brother, Christopher Allen, and her younger sister, Leslie. The union between Gene and Faye Maltese was a pivotal chapter in both of their lives, even though it eventually dissolved into divorce long before Faye passed away in 2017, a timeline confirmed by the Independent. Despite having a father with a household name, Elizabeth has maintained a remarkably private existence, steering clear of the paparazzi. That said, she wasn't entirely invisible. Like many Tinseltown kids, she did pop up at a few red carpet events alongside her dad during her youth. Fans might remember seeing her at the 1978 screening of the blockbuster Superman, where Elizabeth was photographed with her father as he crushed the beloved role of Lex Luthor. Another notable sighting was at the 1996 premiere of The Chamber, another major film Gene starred in. But honestly, these glimpses were the exception, and since then, Elizabeth has basically vanished from the limelight. Her personal world is a closed book to the public, a trait she shares with her siblings. In fact, all three of the Hackman kids, Elizabeth included, have made a conscious effort to live quiet lives far from the flashing lights and media attention. They prefer to keep their business to themselves, rarely issuing statements or showing up for the cameras. This intentional secrecy has created a real air of mystery surrounding the family, with virtually zero information available about their day-to-day lives, careers, or romantic partners. We don't even know for sure if Elizabeth Christopher or Leslie are married, or if they even bother with social media like most in today's digital age. Gene Hackman, the man behind masterpieces like The French Connection and Unforgiven, was famous worldwide, but also managed to fiercely guard his own privacy. After his first marriage wrapped up, he found a soulmate in his second wife, Betsy Arakawa. They got hitched in 1991 and spent over 30 years together, happily living a serene existence away from the Hollywood hustle. Passing away in his 90s, Hackman had long since hung up his acting hat, choosing to spend his twilight years with Arakawa and live a peaceful private life. In an industry where celebrity offspring often clamour for attention, the Hackman brood, Elizabeth included, has gone the other way, choosing a path defined by discretion rather than fame. Their choice to reject the spotlight really speaks to their desire for a normal life free from intrusion, mirroring their father's own decision to vanish from the industry after he retired, while Gene earned his spot in the history books. His children, Elizabeth included, have found success in being ordinary, quiet citizens in their own unassuming way. They are living proof that having a famous last name doesn't mean you're destined for the tabloids. Let's take a look back at Gene's rise to glory. Gene Hackman, the reluctant star who eventually conquered Hollywood. Gene Hackman's road to stardom was bumpy and anything but conventional. Back in 1956, he took a massive gamble and started pursuing the acting dream, signing up at the Pasadena Playhouse in California. It was there that he crossed paths with another future icon, Dustin Hoffman. He threw himself into the acting world, enrolling at the Pasadena Playhouse in California. It was there he encountered another hungry talent, Dustin Hoffman. Back in acting school, nobody believed in them. In fact, their peers actually voted them the most likely to fail completely. Hackman didn't just get a bad grade. He scored the absolute lowest rating in the history of the institution, a humiliating blow that would have destroyed a weaker man's ego. But Gene wasn't about to let a bunch of critics dictate his future. He turned that rejection into pure motivation, packed up his life, and headed straight for the concrete jungle of New York City, where he scraped by on pennies while hunting for his big break. During those lean years, he forged an unbreakable brotherhood with two other struggling unknowns named Dustin Hoffman and Robert Duvall, crashing in tiny roach-infested apartments together as they all fought tooth and nail to get noticed by Hollywood. His golden ticket finally arrived in 1970 with the film I Never Sang for My Father, snagging him a prestigious Oscar nod. However, the real game changer was The French Connection in 1971, a movie that catapulted him into the stratosphere. Portraying the gritty, hard-nosed detective Jimmy Popeye Doyle Hackman took home the Academy Award for Best Actor, instantly securing his status as Hollywood royalty. From that moment forward, Gene was absolutely on fire and completely unstoppable. Throughout the early 70s, he crushed it in blockbusters like The Poseidon Adventure and the critically acclaimed Scarecrow, which bagged the Palm Slumdog at the Cannes Film Festival, as well as Francis Ford Coppola's masterpiece, The Conversation. He even flexed his comedic muscles in Young Frankenstein back in 1974, showing the world that beneath that intense dramatic exterior lay a genuine genius for comedy. By the time the mid-80s rolled around, he was easily one of the most in-demand leading men in the business, headlining classics like 1986's Hoosiers, which is still widely considered one of the absolute best. Sports dramas in cinema history. Even as the new millennium hit, Hackman refused to take his foot off the gas. He shared the screen with the biggest heavyweights of the era, facing off against Morgan Freeman in Under Suspicion, Keanu Reeves in The Replacements, and Owen Wilson in Behind Enemy Lines. Yet one of his most iconic late career roles dropped in 2001 with The Royal Tenenbaums, where he brilliantly portrayed the selfish, eccentric father figure of a deeply messy family. That unforgettable performance snagged him a Golden Globe for Best Actor, proving to everyone that he still had the magic touch. But by 2004, Hackman made the shocking choice to walk away from the limelight. His swan song, Welcome to Mooseport, was a goofy comedy that felt light years away from the intense dramas that built his reputation. Although diehard fans prayed for a comeback, Hackman crushed those dreams in a 2008 interview, confirming he was done for good. Serious health issues were the main driver behind the exit, with his doctors warning him that the extreme stress of film production was taking a dangerous toll on his heart. But just because he left Tinseltown didn't mean he stopped creating. He pivoted to becoming a novelist, penning and publishing several engaging books. He did briefly step back behind the microphone to narrate 2 documentaries for the Marine Corps in 2016 and 2017. As a bona fide cinema legend, Gene Hackman constructed his empire on grit, natural ability, and a refusal to listen to the haters. He went from being the guy voted least likely to succeed to becoming one of the most revered titans in acting history, leaving behind a legacy defined by survival brilliance and roles that will never be forgotten. Looking back, it's pretty clear that his rough and tumble upbringing was the perfect boot camp for superstar status. By surviving the roller coaster of his youth, he managed to carve out his own unique lane for himself in the world. So let's peel back the curtain on his origins. This is the untold story of Gene Hackman's journey from military grunt to Hollywood royalty. Born Eugene Allen Hackman on January 30th, 1930, he started his life in San Bernardino, California, the son of Anna Lyda Elizabeth and Eugene Ezra Hackman. His household, which also included his brother Richard, was constantly in flux. His mom actually hailed from Sarnia, Ontario, Canada, and the Hackman clan bounced around a lot during Eugene's toddler years. They finally dropped anchor in Danville, Illinois, crashing in the house of his English-born grandmother, Beatrice. His dad held down a job operating the printing press for the local paper, the Commercial News, but even with a steady paycheck coming in, things behind closed doors were chaotic. By the time he hit 10 years old, Hackman was already dreaming of acting. However, his childhood was anything but a fairy tale. His parents' marriage crumbled into divorce when he was barely a teenager at 13, and his father eventually walked out on them completely. Even with all that trauma, Hackman kept his eyes locked on his Hollywood dreams. He managed to get through his sophomore year at Storm Lake High School, but he didn't stick around to graduate, deciding to leave home at the tender age of 16. Desperate for adventure and a way to serve, he fudged his birthday and signed up for the United States Marine Corps training as a field radio operator. Uncle Sam sent him halfway across the globe, landing him first in Qingdao, China, and later in Shanghai. But his stint overseas coincided with massive historical shifts. When the communist revolution swept through mainland China in 1949, Hackman was quickly shipped out to Hawaii and subsequently Japan. After putting in 4.5 years in uniform, he got his discharge papers in 1951, leaving the military life behind. Hackman headed to the Big Apple looking for a fresh start. He hustled through a string of random gigs while trying to figure out his path in the city that never sleeps. But fate dealt him a devastating blow in 1962 when his mother lost her life in a tragic. Can you believe he once accidentally set a place on fire just by smoking a cigarette? Talk about a chaotic start, but even with disasters like that, Hackman never let his vision fade. He decided to pivot, leveraging the benefits of the GI Bill to dive into journalism and television production while studying at the University of Illinois. But let's just say the academic life didn't stick. He bailed on the university scene, pretty quickly dropping out before he could even grab that diploma. He didn't let that stop him though. He packed his bags and headed straight back to sunny California, setting the stage for his legendary Hollywood takeover. Gene Hackman's backstory isn't all glitz and glamour. It is paved with serious struggles and a whole lot of pivoting before he found his footing. However, that sheer grit and refusal to quit transformed him into one of the most dynamic and respected heavyweights in the acting world. He racked up shelf after shelf of awards for movies that defined a generation. It is a classic tale of bouncing back and chasing a dream until you catch it. But when the cameras stopped rolling and the lights went down, what was really going on? What about the man behind the characters? Specifically, how did he handle the pressures of family life? Let's dig into the details. This is the untold story of Gene Hackman's marriages, his kids, and his quest for peace. Gene Hackman is a legend, sure, but his off-screen timeline is just as full of dramatic twists and turns as any script he ever read. His romantic history is defined by two major chapters. Way back in 1956, he said "I do" to Faye Maltese. That decision kicked off a marathon marriage that lasted 3 whole decades. During that long run, they welcomed 3 kids into the world. They had a son, Christopher Allen, and 2 daughters, Elizabeth Jean and Leslie Ann Hackman, completing the family picture. But here is the catch: Hollywood demands a lot. Hackman was constantly jetting off to remote locations for months at a time to shoot his blockbusters. Even with thousands of miles between them, he tried his hardest to stay plugged into his children's lives and not be a total stranger. The industry, however, has a way of straining even the strongest bonds. Sadly, after 30 years of trying to make it work, the marriage crumbled and they finalised their divorce in 1986. But don't think for a second that Hackman gave up on love. 5 years later, in 1991, he walked down the aisle again. This time, it was with Betsy Arakawa, a gifted classical pianist. Betsy, born in 1959, became his rock. The two of them escaped the LA madness and built a stunning life together out in Santa Fe, New Mexico. That house became their private fortress. Perched right on top of a 12-acre hill, the property was nothing short of spectacular. We are talking about a full 360-degree panoramic view that would take your breath away, overlooking the majestic Jemez Mountains. Not to mention the Sangre de Cristo and Sandia ranges. The place was so gorgeous, it landed a spread in Architectural Digest back in 1990. It was designed with that classic southwestern flair, perfectly capturing the sophisticated taste the couple shared for design and atmosphere. Their desert oasis was all about high culture. Living in Santa Fe allowed them to dive deep into the local artistic community. Hackman has always had a soft spot for the arts, so he didn't just live there. He became a permanent fixture in the Santa Fe social scene. Years after leaving Hollywood, he was still out there hitting up galleries and events. It looked like he finally found that perfect work-life harmony. This second chapter brought him serious peace. His marriage to Arakawa stood the test of time until she tragically passed away in 2026. Throughout their years together, they built a bond based on mutual respect and a shared love for the finer things in life. Even though he had long since retired from the silver screen, Hackman stayed active, keeping his finger on the pulse of Santa Fe's vibrant culture. He kept connecting with the artists and creators that he and his late wife loved so much. It is quite the journey for a guy from humble beginnings. Looking at his timeline, you see a man who conquered the chaos of celebrity to eventually find a quiet, grounded existence. From the stress of raising a family while shooting movies on the other side of the world to his golden years surrounded by art. Hackman's story is proof that people can evolve. He went from Hollywood hard hitter to a serene art patron in the desert. But here is the real question. What is your take on the recent buzz about his daughter finally confirming those long-standing rumours? Drop your theories in the comments section below, and hey, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe for more celebrity deep dives.